Let's get started with Advanced Scene Manager. If you don't already have Advanced Scene Manager, you can download our trial version and follow along and see how it works out. Maybe you like it. You can find the trial version on our GitHub, and on our asset store page there's a link which will take you here. It requires Unity 6 for the trial version, but the full version is only 2021.3. So you can click here to download, and there's the download button here, so follow along. You can also find our quick start guide on GitHub, our documentation. There's also a link on our asset store page for that, so you can follow this one if you like. So here I am with an empty project. All I've done is install Advanced Scene Manager that you can find in packages. So the first thing we want to do is to open our Scene Manager window, which you can find in Files, Menu, Advanced Scene Manager. Open that up. You're greeted with some blue squares that you should probably read. The first one will tell you to follow the quick start guide if you don't have. The editor coroutine package must be installed. That is for different buttons to work, because we load the scene in and out in the editor, and that needs to work. So let's install that. If you use any other like repositories like Git or GitHub or Bitbucket, so on, packages cannot exist in a public project or a public repository. So you have to add that to git ignore, and this shows just how to do that simply. And the last one is for patches. We usually upload patches to GitHub more frequently than to asset store. It can take a day or 3 days for the asset store to process, and usually by that time we might have another patch pushed. So we usually do the asset store update a little bit later than the GitHub. Now, if you did not update the patch from this one and you dismissed it, you can state it. You can usually see it here as well. This little check for update button here. And we're up to date. Perfect. You can also turn it off if you don't want to see patches. Maybe you are in a project and you don't need to update it. Update patches if you need it, really. Now we are in the Scene Manager window, and I'm going to open the build profile so we can see our scenes here. Advanced Scene Manager handles scene list automatically when you add and remove scenes. First we have to do is to create a new profile, and you can have different profiles for maybe different platforms or different environments. And as you can see here, it populated a bunch of scenes. This is the default scenes now, loading screens and such that we can add and remove. I have an issue here that I have scenes that are not tracked. Let's track that. I have scenes that is ready to be imported. You have to import scenes to Advanced Scene Manager if you want to add it to it. That is to make sure that the scenes are specifically set to be used in Advanced Scene Manager. There are other assets like World Streamers that generates like 300 scenes, and you might not want to have Advanced Scene Manager handle those. So we can. So that's why we import scenes and unimport them if we don't want to use them in Advanced Scene Manager. And I see here that I have setting scenes, URP or something, and I don't want to see that folder. So I can blacklist it, and I will blacklist the scene. And now I won't import that. And I want to import the sample scene so that we can work with that. There we go. The first thing that you see here are a bunch of collections. We have a startup collection, currently empty, a main menu collection, currently empty. We have a standalone collection that has a pause scene and an in-game toolkit scene. And those are nothing special really. Game menu. The in-game toolbar is just so you can see when you build if everything is working with some basic controls. And the pause scene is just, this is just basic controls for your game that you are supposed to modify and replace later. And you can add those here. And the standalone scene are scenes that are not connected to a special collection. These are just make sure that they are added in Advanced Scene Manager. So if we look at the build settings again, we have the pause scene here, and when we remove it, still there because it's a default right here. So I'm going to remove defaults. As you can see, the scene list is automatically updated, but I still want to have the defaults there because they have loading screens and stuff I will use later. But if you make your own loading screens and splash screens and other things, it's okay to remove this one so you don't add them to your build later. But for now I'm going to keep that, but I'm going to remove the in-game toolbar and replace it with the pause one because I want to use that. The collections are a collection of scenes. These ones are special, so let's talk about the normal ones. When you open a collection, you open every scene that is added to it. So I'm going to start by building up a project, I guess. So I have the sample scene that I will use as a bootstrap scene, so I'm going to rename that. And this scene is, I think it's supposed to be like the main scene with all the dependent managers and cameras and the event system stuff that's supposed to be connected. That's supposed to be there all the time. It's like don't destroy on load, just that you can build it up like this without adding the don't destroy on load script and such. So bootstrap, I'm gonna add that. The collection is set to persistence, as we can see here. This is just a name, but by default this first collection you get is persistent, as you see here, open persistent. Persistent means that the scene will once opened once, it will always stay open until you tell it to close specifically. So even if you close this collection, it will still be open. The next thing we want is a main menu. Creating a new scene here by pressing that button that was there. I can open it up, and we have a main menu. I want to have a simple button. So we can load the next level later. An empty project, we don't even have this installed yet. There we go. So let's see what happens now if we play the game. So this first play button here, that means like start the Advanced Scene Manager process like as if it was a built game. So it will start them up in order as you define them, and make sure that your dependent scenes are loaded first before any other scenes are open. So the first thing we see here is a splash screen, which we can modify and change. And there we go. We have the bootstrap, our persistent scene, as we can see here, and we have our main menu. Very simple. So I don't want to load the splash screen every time we run the game now, so I'm going to go to settings, startup, and here you can change the splash screen. I'm going to remove it. You can make your own splash screen. You can just duplicate one of ours here in packages, splash screen, duplicate it and modify it to your liking. The splash screen is just a normal scene, as you see here, with a script on it. That's all you need for that. So when the splash screen plays, any other scene that's loaded up on startup is hidden behind it. So it's loaded while the splash screen is playing. So how do we change this startup? Or what does this startup mean here? This is the startup sequence that will run the first time you launch your game, the first time you play your game. And that's easy to change. We have the startup here, currently set to open. You can also set it to do not open. And now only main menu will start up. Auto is a bit special. As you can see, it does not set startup here, but if we put everything to auto, the first one will always be a startup. The first one in order, as you can see here. But in this case, we want multiple scenes to be opened in the startup sequence. We can place all scenes in a collection as persistent if we want, but we can also make sure that only one scene in a collection is set to persistent. We can do that here. We can also tell Advanced Scene Manager how to handle a scene if it's already opened. So how do we create a new collection? You do that down here. We press here, make a new collection, and next to it we can make a template if you want, and we can create a new dynamic collection, which is one of these. Just gonna delete that for now. My new collection, I want to be rename it to level 1, for example. So for my first level, I want to have a scene for that. Obviously, I'm gonna call that one gameplay. And I also want to have one for the environment stuff. If we open all of them, close the main menu for now. This is a good way to separate them, so you can create your environment stuff in one scene and your gameplay stuff in one scene, and then make sure that the environment scene is loaded before the gameplay scene. You can add any scenes to multiple collections, and if the scene already exists in a new collection that you load, it will, depending on the setup that you chose, you can decide if you want to reopen it or keep it open. So it's a good thing to separate them. For gameplay, for example, you have your player there, and the environment you have your terrain. So I'm just gonna add something like a plane. I'm gonna dock this one somewhere better so we can see what we're doing. So for example, we have the plane in our environment, and in our gameplay we might have our player. We also need our light so we can see something. No light. I'm going to change the capsule, different material so we can see it. That one. Like that. So you can separate your game into multiple different scenes so it's easier to work with, smaller scenes. Yeah, you maybe have terrain in one, maybe you have castles or other dynamic objects in one. That's a good way to separate them. And another important thing to do is to make sure that we have the right active scene. The right active scene for when we instantiate things. Like we want to instantiate things into the gameplay, but if we play it right now, then you can see that the active scene is the bootstrap scene, which we do not want to be the active scene. For example, when we open the main menu scene, we want the main menu scene to be active, perhaps. We can change that in going to the settings, scroll down to the active scene, and set that to the main menu. Let's also try that with the level 1. I'm going to set this one to open at startup so we can see it. And for the active scene, I want the gameplay scene. I'm going to change that. Let's see what happens. So you can see the active scene changed a lot, but in the end it ends up on the gameplay. And that's precisely what we want for this case. So separating scenes like this is a good way to minimize or make your scene smaller when you work. You maybe just want to work with gameplay, or maybe you just want to work with the environment. Very handy to have them separated. I also very highly recommend to have Cinemachine when you're working with multiple scenes, so you can have your camera in the bootstrap and it's always going to render stuff. Because if we place the main camera in the gameplay only and we play the game again, we're going to notice that we don't have a camera for many of the things, but we always want to have a camera, so it's a good idea to have the camera here. Or you can absolutely have multiple cameras in different scenes, but I recommend Cinemachine, having the main camera here and the brain, and having a virtual camera in the gameplay to control the camera. Then the camera is going to render all the time. So how do we open the level 1 scene now that it's not open on startup? We want to open it with the canvas button we made. So let's set that up. First I'm going to style this one a little. I like to do 400 by 60 and text level 1. Just make this auto size so it takes up a little bit more space. There we go. The easiest way to open scenes with a button is just to scroll down to the on click, and here on the scene manager you can either drag the scene helper, which is a scriptable object with some handy actions you can use, like open collection, open level 1, or open a scene, open maybe the pause scene. Or you can just drag a collection right in here and select open. Alternatively, you can just load a scene by dragging the scene in and click open. You can also preload a scene, preload a collection, but you also have to remember to nope, not there. You also have to remember to finish preload, but this won't work if you do it like this, because you haven't preloaded the scene in time, but you can find it in the scene helper. You can also do it by code, absolutely. But let's use the scene manager or the scene helper. Scene helper, open a scene collection and open level 1. You do not need to add close scene collection for main menu. When you open a new collection, any old collection will close. In this case, I chose the wrong open here. Open additive means that you open the collection without closing the old collection, but I want to close the old collection, so let's update that. So now in the main menu, everything works. And we have loaded in the level 1, as you see here, and the main menu has been closed. Now you also notice that we did have a loading screen already. Loading screens exist by default in settings, scene loading. Here you can change them or not have one, and you can create your own. Very simple. I made another video for that you can follow. I'm gonna turn that off for now. Let's just keep the fade one. You can also override the loading screen per collection if you want to use another loading screen for different collections. You can do that here in the collection settings, loading, override, or even tell it do not use a loading screen when loading this collection, but override. You can select your loading screen here, so you can have one per collection. You can also have a loading screen per scene, not in the settings. You have to do that part by code. So I think we're gonna look at some code. So Advanced Scene Manager, even though you can do most things in the editor by just using the scene helper, the real advanced features comes when we start working in the code. So instead of doing the button here, let's make it in a script instead. So I'm going to create a load level script and open that up. So the best part about Advanced Scene Manager, in my opinion, is that we have everything. Everything can be a reference. Every scene, every collection can be a reference by simply doing this. That's the and add the using Advanced Scene Manager model. Let's call this one level 1. This is the reference for a scene, and as you can see here, we can do level 1 dot open. Very simple. We can also do the same for a scene collection. Level 1, or can't have the same name here. Same thing. Collection has open as well. But it also has a lot more things. We have open, preload, all of those that you see in the scene helper. But the nice thing is we can do open, but close. We can tell it to close another scene collection. Maybe we have one for level 2. We can do level 2. So we tell it to open level 1, close level 2, for example. But since both are collection, you don't need that if you use the open. But this is called the Fluent API. So you can do with loading screen if you want a special loading screen. And since loading screens are just scenes, we could do like this. Loading screen. Loading screen. Nope. Loading screen. We could do with what can we have here? We can have different, and we can tell it to, for example, we can have different callbacks. We can have loading priority, like load priority. Maybe we want to load this collection quick, so with a high priority. We can tell it to activate special scene when it's done. With the Fluent API, we can do a lot of customization like this. So these are just normal references that we can go like this. And for level 1, we want to have our level 1. We can simply just add that there, or we can just drag it in. It's a reference, it's a scriptable object. As you can see here, you don't really need to worry about this. So let's continue with making the button work for the script instead. I'm going to remove all these references that I don't need. I'm going to remove the functions, make a public void load level level 1 dot open. And on the on click, I can just use that script instead, and that should work. Let's try it out. Yep, works as expected. We have different ways to loading and stuff that you can check out in the documentation. In the overview of ASM API structure, you can see different ways to load stuff. Like Fluent API, we have other ways. Can you still use Unity's play button? Yes. Let's try that out. So if you use this one instead with the bootstrap and the main menu, let's see if the button still works. Sure does. So you can use that, but it does not. It won't. Using Unity's play button won't do the startup process. So be aware of that. You should also be aware of the different callbacks. For example, like here, we have the scene callbacks. We have many different, like for when a scene opens, when a collection opens, when all the scenes in a collection has opened. We have them in different ways, like void, if you want to trigger an action, in a coroutine, if you want to do something before the loading screen closes. You can use a coroutine to pause the loading screen and do stuff behind the scenes. I have shown that in the loading screen tutorial I did, and if you use tasks or awaitable, we also have that. And that is very simple to add. iCollection I can never spell this one. iCollection open coroutine. There we go. Maybe one day I will get that one right. Implement an interface, and this one will be called when all the scenes have been opened, when all the collection has been opened, so you can use it as a normal coroutine. Because the scenes are additive, if you have the gameplay and environment here like I do, you might want to have the environment first or the gameplay first, so because they load in order. If you load a scene that has dependence on another scene that has not been loaded yet, you will get errors. So using this callback as well makes sure that all the scenes are loaded before you start the game or before you handle your initialization for the scenes or any other things. And the important thing is that they live in a mono behavior in a scene that's being loaded by the collection. Let's try that. I can do like, I'm going to show you what I mean. Debug log collection dot name, so we can check which collection this one was part of. Yes, there we have it, main menu. So even if we load the level 1, whoops, I removed the loading. Public void load. No, I don't want any special. Level 1 dot open. Go. Don't know why I deleted that, but go. And let's see it again. This log should show for main menu only. There it is, and if we play the next level, no log, because we did not have iCollection on a script in those scenes. So that's a good way to start the game when all scenes are loaded. Well, I don't know if I missed anything. Tutorials are not my thing, so if I figure something out that needs to be explained, or if you have any questions, just come over to Discord and we can have a chat. And if I find something else I need to explain, I will try to make another video. But hope this helps.